Hi, I'm Anjali Purkayastha, and welcome to the first episode of The Next Step, where I interview franchising experts about industry trends and their next steps. Today, I'm sitting down with Troy Hooper. Troy, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Troy Hooper from Kiwi Restaurant Partners. We're a full service consulting firm that manages turnaround, ownership transition, new concept development, a whole host of services, and including franchising as a big part of our business. So glad to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. I've been really enjoying your content on LinkedIn, and I know that you have some interest in the virtual kitchen space. Love to hear more about what you guys have going on.
Yeah, so a few years ago, we wanted to be a little bit more flexible, a little bit more uh, deep and vertical with some of our partnerships and relationships, and find some equity opportunities to partner in new brands. We've developed some brands for a number of other entities, and we had our own ideas and wanted to launch some of our own brands. And in that journey, we found the opportunity to become partners in a joint venture with an existing brand, which is going to allow us to launch multiple brands side by side with that in a very similar genre of organic eatery style concepts. And so we're not just consulting, we're not just partners, we're developers, but we're also operators, and not only operators for others, but operators for our own concepts. So in thinking about what the future looks like in the restaurant industry, I think, especially in the quick service and fast casual arena, you have to be really aware of what's going on. And virtual ghost kitchens have been on the radar for just a little while. For most folks, it's brand new, and a lot of folks are just really starting to hear about it. And I'm concerned about the average independent or small chain owner who doesn't see this coming and doesn't realize the speed at which this is taking off. So we've done a lot of research. We've spent a lot of time with the different emerging concepts around ghost kitchens and virtual kitchens, both as an R&D and an understanding what the competitive opportunity set is, but also is this an area we want to venture into? And this is a very fresh and recent topic as we are on the edge of signing with one that we've been selected by and selected of.
Mhm.
So we just have a lot of understanding around this, and are about to become operators in that space.
Well, congratulations. That's fantastic. And you mentioned that you're worried that some of the smaller operators don't see this coming. I work with a lot of franchisees, and I've also worked with independent restaurants. Used to be bookkeeping, and now it's hiring software. And what would you want smaller operators to know about this new trend?
That it's a significant threat to cannibalize volume, for somebody to do what you do as good, if not better, with
Hmm.
far less overhead, and the ability to, if you're in a virtual space and a ghost kitchen environment and you're an online presence exclusively, you can adapt much quicker, right? You don't have a space to remodel. You don't have a sign out front to change. You literally can open a new concept and test it tomorrow, side by side, and let the winner be the winner, or have yourself have multiple concepts side by side in the same kitchen. Really meaning that you're living only on a website with ordering capability and your third party delivery platforms and whatever you're doing for catering delivery offering. You can launch very quickly and you can adapt very quickly. Whereas, if you're running a Peruvian restaurant or other ethnically based restaurant that's really specific, or an Americana, gastropub or new American new restaurant, you sort of have designed everything around it, the experience, the delivery, the education of your staff. Everything has been designed to that concept. Well, in a virtual space, you don't have that, right? You have a website and social media pages and what lives on the third party delivery platforms as a presence. And all of that quite literally can be changed the morning you open and relaunch something new. So the adaptability, I think, is going to allow people to respond to consumer demand based on data, based on actual order volume, based on feedback and review, And whereas a normal restaurant may take a month, 2 or 3 to change a menu,
Mhm.
these folks can drop something in a day and add 3 more things tomorrow. So it's really interesting what some of the big brands are doing.
Mhm.
And that's a new learning for us, is understanding what some of the big brands are very quietly doing. And nobody really realizes that they're using this as a testing ground. And really, you're going to see these big box brands create new brands very quickly, and you're probably going to eat them and enjoy them and not even know that it's owned by Chick-fil-A, owned by Wendy's, owned by Taco Bell, owned by Doghouse is a great example. Doghouse here in California, kind of a Southern California chain that's fairly well known and has grown well. Um, they serve burgers and hot dogs and I think corn dogs and a few other items. Well, they're essentially taking their entire menu and splitting it vertically. So there's going to be a hot dog brand under Doghouse. There's going to be a burger brand with a different name. There's going to be a corn dog brand, whatever and
Mhm.
they're playing with 8 or 9 potential concepts, and that's a really new. Normally, you knew who you were working against, you knew who your competition was in your neighborhood, in your block, in your genre, and now they can come up, gain market share. You never even saw them coming. You never even heard of them until they're already cannibalizing your business. So that's the concern I have for people who just, as a restaurant owner, you are waking up, unlocking the door, turning on the lights, you know, getting the ovens fired up, you're greeting your guests, you're operating with your staff. And so I understand when you're in a restaurant 12, 14 hours a day or more, you just don't really have the time, or you don't have the bandwidth to really see what's out there and what's happening, especially when it's hidden in a warehouse the block behind yours, or potentially in the building down the street. If you're in an urban zone, it could be in the basement, and you don't even know
Mhm.
that 30 brands are pumping out of a basement a block from you, and you don't see that. It's a blind spot.
That's crazy. Yeah, that does sound very significant. And I know we're also seeing some big names take positions in the space. Andreessen Horowitz is investing. It's really growing, and you're right, it's popped up very quickly. I know as soon as 6 months ago, it wasn't on my radar. And so restaurants are typically a high margin business. I'm sorry, narrow margin business where we see high labor cost, high cost of goods sold, high rent. And what impacts do you see on margins from these ghost kitchens? Do you think ghost
Um,
kitchens are going to be higher margin?
Yeah, they generally are. I mean, you're right. You're eliminating a lot of square footage. You're eliminating all the FF&E, the furniture and the light fixtures and the bathrooms. Obviously, you're definitely eliminating elements of the workforce. You can do a lot more with a lot fewer people, because of all those elements being removed.
Mhm.
And however, and the theory is that you're going to do more volume, right? But you do lose the experiential customer. You do lose the sit down customer. The coffee shop, have a meeting, get connection with other humans across a table, breaking bread. So you do have to do a lot more marketing work. You have to be smarter, faster, more agile with your marketing. So I think you do lose a little bit initially. There's a bit of a curve of getting your business volume up, but the reality is you can do more with less. You can have less menu items that are more profitable. So there's ways to offset it, right? And so whereas most people will raise or take life savings and apply that as capital to build out a brick and mortar, in Southern California, you'd be very hard pressed to open a new build restaurant for under $550,000. There's a lot of opportunities to take existing restaurants that unfortunately have gone out of business, but then you sort of inherit what the concerns of that location might have been or whatever. Um, but I think we're going to see higher margins. I think most of the brands are driving better margins by having multiple concepts off the same line. So they may only have 6 or 8 when they normally, a full brick and mortar might have 25 or 30 menu items. Now they'll pare it down to 6 or 8, but be very specific and very good at those 6 or 8, and then have another set of concepts side by side, that then that volume might equal or exceed the volume of a brick and mortar, a single concept brick and mortar.
Great. So it seems like this should certainly be on the radar of all the various restaurant franchisees out there. Is there anything they can do to respond? Should they be talking to their franchisors about it? What can they be doing to protect themselves from this threat to their market share?
Yeah, so this is the wild, wild west of this situation, and I think it's going to still be another couple of years before this really pans out and starts to settle down. And part of the disruption that is going to happen over the next couple of years is the anxiety around what these third-party platforms are going to do. Is there going to be consolidation? There's over 200 of them in the United States. We know of the top 5 or 6 around the country, but there's a lot of micro brands that are being scooped up. And I think what happens there may impact it. You're going to see the big box brands play with 2 models. Right now, they're testing both models. Model A is the traditional corporate owned, corporate operated situation. That's interesting if you're a franchisee, especially a multi-unit franchisee of a particular single brand. Your franchisor might be in your market now, whereas you own that market. They may be in your market running the virtual offering, which then of course impacts your business. And so that hasn't been figured out, and different brands are playing with different models there, and different legalities are going to play out with that. But also, I can tell you that there's a couple of brands, and particularly I know Wendy's, in at least one instance, is engaged with a franchisee that obviously is successful and has a good relationship with, and they are in a joint venture in a virtual space. So they want to have the corporate entity at Wendy's wants to have some say in what the offering is, what the testing menu items might be to use in that way, but they don't want to run it on a day-to-day. They want the qualified operator that they have a good relationship with to run it. So they're joint venturing. And then the question is going to be, and this really hasn't even been played out yet, is if you're a franchisee, particularly a multi-unit franchisee, and you've proven capability, and you want to expand your delivery capabilities or catering capabilities to a much more micro-dense market, sub-market within your greater development territory, are you going to be able to do that, right? How are they going to sell that franchise right to you? And are they thinking about whether they don't want to do that at all? And now you have a competitive relationship with your franchisor. So these are all new pieces of the puzzle that really everybody's thinking about, but they're all trying it differently and seeing what works.
Wow. So do you think that for people who are considering buying a restaurant franchise that are new, that they should be considering these virtual kitchens when they negotiate their contracts and maybe ask for a clause about it? Does that seem like something that maybe should be added to these agreements and maybe even be in the FDD?
Absolutely. And I hope that the brands, franchisors, and franchisees can come to the table and, like in the case of this particular Wendy's location, joint venture at the very least, come to the table and have some understanding, have some discussion. I don't think any one of them has an answer. And I think if they think they have the answer today, it's probably going to change. And so they're going to have to make mistakes and see how it works and see if it hurts, what side of the business model it hurts or helps. But this absolutely has to be a conversation, because if you want to have the opportunity to expand and do the virtual kitchen, and the franchisor doesn't even have that sketched out, they haven't even decided or thought that through, you can be the person bringing it to the table and being a part of the solution, the conversation. But I think you're going to find in some cases, especially the bigger box brands, are probably have decided something and may not be where they land eventually. But the question is where have they landed temporarily, or at least for now, and does that work in your relationship? Are you satisfied with that as a franchisee? And I think you need to know, I think you need to ask that question. I think you need to ask them to give you a very clear answer, a strategy, a plan that they're comfortable with sharing, at least at this time. And you're going to have to, that's just going to be part of your evaluation of whether this is a brand you feel well aligned with or you feel comfortable with. And I think it's okay if they don't have an answer. I mean, I think
it's evolving.
It's evolving, and I think you should offer yourself that strengthens your position if you can bring ideas and bring some capabilities to the table. Offer to be the test unit, right?
Oh,
If
that's a
they'll
great
help
idea.
fund it, be a part of that process. If nothing else, you're going to gain learnings from it that you can apply, elsewhere. But yeah, there's some interesting things, because you get away from big box brands and you get to these smaller emerging brands who are very hungry for growth and very interested in tertiary and secondary markets around the large markets. And they're excited to give you that opportunity. again, it really is going to change the territory mapping and structure. And
Mhm.
I won't be surprised if ultimately we see a separate vertical, right, where they're
Mhm.
selling boxed brick and mortar, full service, full rendition concepts, and then potentially offering a entry point, a lower barrier to entry cost point to come in and become a virtual franchisee. And maybe that is the proofing mechanism to earning your right to becoming a full box franchisee, if they even exist eventually.
It seems like it could actually be a way for more people to have access to becoming restaurant franchisees, since presumably there would be a lot lower barrier to entry there. There wouldn't be the
It might be
protocol.
10%.
Yeah.
It on the very low end, on the very low end, if you're very, very minimal with your development and the needs you have, and you can work on the simplistic equipment, you don't have a lot of specialty equipment needs, it can easily be 7 to 10% of the cost. And depending on the brand, right? Even an emerging brand that maybe the franchise rights fees are 40,000 and
Mhm.
the build out fee is 400,000. So you're in, let's call it 440 plus 6 months operating capital, with
Mhm.
nothing else, just as a box delivered, ready to go. You can go into a virtual kitchen for under 50 grand.
That's
So
crazy.
now you have to rethink maybe your marketing strategy. You don't have drive-by business, brand awareness through signage. You need to be a little more aggressive, but again, that's targeted. These virtual kitchens are targeting high density populations within 10 minutes of the location. And so that means you can be in a lot of these and service very, very niche micro markets. And so when you focus your social media marketing and direct marketing inside of such a very small geographic area, you can get really contextual. You can play a lot, you can test a lot, and it doesn't cost very much at all. So it's going to be very interesting to see these brands gain a lot of traction very quick, but in very small
Mhm.
micro niche markets. And then the question will be is how do they proliferate that? What does that expansion model look like?
Well, and it seems like it would attract younger franchisees who would maybe have already quite a social media presence.
The future is Gen Z, millennial, younger millennial Gen Z, 100%. These companies are being born out of tech players, right? These are tech guys, a lot of them, not just Travis Kalanick from Uber and the other guys from Uber. There's two different, a lot of these are tech companies, but they are partnering and hiring and bringing onto their executive teams very seasoned, big box professionals, people that have had a lot of experience testing and playing with a lot of different ideas. And so they're mirroring or matching up this tech and leadership first, and restaurant knowledge and skill set and consumer understanding second, or alongside
Mhm.
at least equally. And that's really interesting because entrepreneurship just got real affordable, and failure isn't that expensive. And here's what I see: you launch Joe's Edamame restaurant, whatever that is, 42 flavors of edamame. Today, if that doesn't catch on, you still have the kitchen, and you probably are trying 7 or 8 items, out. And in the tech play, if these younger folks, maybe not going to college, maybe just getting out of college, this can be a trial play. This can be something they do just as personal development, just as a test. And it may lead them to becoming an entrepreneur somewhere else. But I think you're right. I think the younger entrepreneur minded, gig economy related person who really has a grasp around the technology side of this, it's organic, it's inherent, it's native to them. Whereas if you're a 45, 55-year-old restaurateur, there was a traditional way up until 2 years ago. There was a traditional way you went about this,
Mhm.
and the tech model has really, an investing tech model has really changed how these brands are being brought to market.
So, do you think it's going to become more difficult to sell a traditional restaurant franchise that has a build out and is minimum $500,000 when people could invest in virtual kitchens and maybe even try several different brands at once?
I think that maybe. I think the more expensive ones, the premium priced, high cost build out ones,
Mhm.
potentially. I think you're going to see more and more of the VC funded private equity groups sort of gobble those up and own really slices of big brands, or bigger slices of big brands. I think in the emerging concepts, I think that you're going to see more play, more variety tested, more risk, because it's such a low risk compared to what the investment was previously.
Mhm.
So I think it's going to be interesting. Again, going back to the big boxes, if they don't have to sell $1 million Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's with $1 million build out, but they can open 30 virtual locations in Manhattan,
Mhm.
um, without all of that overhead. Is the brand going to do that? Is a large developer, a concept developer, franchisee developer team going to do that? It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be every man for himself, but I think the opportunity is with the young entrepreneur who can scrounge 50, 75 grand together and has a really good idea, or has some experience working in a restaurant, wants to improve on something. Um,
Mhm.
there might be some revenge. I'm going to go down the street, open a virtual kitchen, and I'm going to do the same thing you're doing, boss, but I'm going to do it better because you don't want to listen to my ideas, right? I mean, that just became real. That just became an option.
I think
Now,
some of our listeners are cringing right now.
right, there's a barrier there, though. Here's one caveat. The barrier is that the demand for participation in this space by the restaurateur is far greater than the current facilities built out and available. And so the virtual kitchen, ghost kitchen companies, especially the top 3 or 4 that are emerging at scale, and have plans for very big scale, they have the opportunity to be very selective. So to be honest, having gone through this process, they are vetting you. They want experienced operators who have a plan, who have good ideas, can run multiple concepts, and really they're concerned about your capabilities around marketing, because I think traditionally what you find is most restaurateurs don't know anything about marketing in the modern age, or are struggling with it, or are testing or playing with it. And these are tech guys. They want to know how to work in this space, and how to work with these medians. And so they're vetting. And so I think at least initially you're going to see the best case scenario. Now, that being said, they are leaving a little room. There is a percentage of room for cultivation, for test lab, for food lab concepts, for one-offs that have never happened, and operators who just have great energy and tenacity and great work ethic, and can sell the idea. They are leaving a little room to play in that space. But overall, I don't think you're going to see a lot of turnover in the fly-by-night trial, fail, move on, like that, like a fad. I think they're going to still require some pretty serious operational understanding and commitment and passion for the industry, because turnover for them is not going to be good either.
Right, of course. So you're saying that I'm not going to be able to open my virtual kitchen tomorrow.
No, I think there's plenty of virtual spaces you could do that with. I think in these large top 4 or so that are emerging as the current framework platforms, and they're all trying to do differentiating things amongst each other, I think they would be very difficult. But there's lots of folks. You, me, and Joe down the street could go down and open a virtual kitchen tomorrow and fill it up. Now, what support we provide them, what vetting we do, what trial and error we're comfortable with, that's up to us. And there is a lot of that going on, certainly in major markets like Los Angeles. New York is prohibitive. Chicago's in between, with real estate costs and still square footage for blank space. But there's people doing that too. There's a number. There's a good dozen or 12 or 13, 14 of these out there right now.
Mhm.
But they're one-offs, right? If you're somebody who's looking to scale and you want to have multiple locations in a particular market, or you want to go right across the United States overnight, these larger, more established organizations that have raised funds to be able to build out really state-of-the-art facilities, and provide great service to you as the occupant, they're a little out of reach right now.
Okay. So, do you think that restaurant consultants and other relevant vendors should be talking to restaurants about the virtual kitchen trend and how they can get ready, start talking to their franchisor, and maybe even consider moving into that space as their next step?
Yes, absolutely. If you let's talk to the folks who have a great concept, have been doing very well, have been maximizing their downtime um, with of the kitchen to do other things, whether it be a good catering program, a delivery program, or even testing new menus, secret menus, online only menus within a particular space, and especially those that might have 1 to 3 or 5 stores. You have to be having these conversations. You need to be touring these facilities, talking to these executives, and thinking about your strategy for growth. Because if it's going to cost you $500,000 to $700,000 to go into a AAA or AA retail space for your next store, and the ROI on that is 5 to 7 years, and you could open 4 or 5 virtual spaces, even if your volume is drastically lower, but your costs are exponentially lower, maintaining or improving upon your margins, that needs to be a conversation internally. And I think you need to be looking at what your competitors are doing in the same genre, the same market, or in other markets, and how they're having success. Um, you know, uh, that entrepreneur needs to be absorbing as much information, talking to a consultant who understands this, talking to those virtual brands and destinations, and not making that a hasty decision, because it does require some different thought. It requires different thought around your marketing, your web presence, your online ordering platform, negotiating with third-party delivery platforms to get the best fee base, because right now that's really kind of out of control in what they're charging. Um, how are you going to use an aggregator to receive your orders and manage your orders? So it's a bit of a different. Now, many of those folks are playing with those elements in their existing brick and mortar today, so
Mhm.
it's not super foreign. But I think if you're not looking at this, if this is not on your radar, there's a lot of reading and a lot of video and a lot of these types of programs that people like yourself are putting on, which are great. Thank you for doing this. I think you have to have your eyes on this and be really thoughtful.
So I feel like every day I talk to at least one franchisee who has been doing things a certain way for 30 years, has seen tremendous success, obviously still in business. What would you say to that franchisee? Because I can imagine the conversation if I called one of them and tried to talk to them about virtual kitchens, and I would imagine that they would say, it's a fad, it's not going to go anywhere, and I'm going to keep doing things the same way. What would you say to that person?
Talk to their children and their grandchildren. Um, you have to pay attention to what consumers are doing. What people are doing is what is happening, and it's real, and you can't ignore that.
Mhm.
Big box retail not adjusting and having the overhead and being vulnerable to online ordering. Oh, who's going to order shoes online? You don't.
Mhm.
Who doesn't order? Like, you have to try them on, right? You have to walk back and forth up and down the hallway to know if it's a good. No, people order 10 pairs of shoes and send 6 back,
Right.
right? And so if you're not, you just can't be nostalgic. You have to go where people are going. Um, we're going to be flying around in drones in 2 to 3 years in Los Angeles. You
Mhm.
know, that's not new. Helicopter commuting in New York City is a very common thing. So, cars driving themselves today. I watched a guy cleaning his glasses, doing this, pulled out a piece of paper, driving down the 405 in a Tesla. He
Oh
didn't
my
look at that
god,
wheel, you know?
so
Like,
scary.
you gotta pay attention. And in the food space, what are people doing? And if you read articles where 32, 38% of some brands are going out through delivery, or consumers are telling you in surveys, read the publications, consumers are telling you, look, if the food's good, if it's fast, if the order's accurate, it solves my problem. I don't have to stop what I'm doing, get out of my pajamas at my virtual gig job at home, go down the street, find parking, pay for parking, right? There's a lot of pain points to going and sitting and getting food. And Service, as we know, always been a challenge, even more so today. Why am I going to pay extra for the service that's not really doing me anything of value? There's just a lot of friction to the current model, and this tech driven virtual experience is solving for most of it. It's not perfect, there's plenty of mistakes, but good operators are solving those mistakes. They're adjusting.
Mhm.
So certain brands are going to emerge and they're going to be the winners. They're going to be the the excellent executors of this. And a lot of people won't, and it'll be messy for a while, but you have to be aware, you have to pay attention. Otherwise, you're vulnerable. You're just vulnerable.
Well, Troy, I've learned so much from you today about virtual kitchens. It's been amazing, and definitely going to start making sure my clients have this on their radar. So, every episode, I want to ask my guests what their next steps are. So, I'd love for you to share with us what you're doing next.
So our next step, as of yesterday, we've agreed as a ownership team, and we have had the great privilege of being invited to be a partner in one of the national virtual kitchen brands. We are committing to multiple locations in the Los Angeles market, and as they become available, because we already have a presence in New Jersey, looking at the New York opportunities. And I expect that we're going to be opening not less than 4 virtual locations and probably one multiple concept guest facing food hall version of our brands in this year. So the ability to move quickly and fill the space and open and operate without architect and design and build out and contractors and permitting and all that is very attractive to saturate a market, get brand presence and awareness. So for us, we're going all in. We're going to put all our chips in that basket and see where it takes us and become far more educated than we even are today.
That's amazing. I can't wait to hear how it goes, and hopefully, you'll come back on the show and let us know everything that happens.
I certainly will. Thank you again. Appreciate the opportunity, and good luck to everybody out there. It's a wild world, but we all do it because we love it.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for coming on the show. I know we just met and you were so generous with your time, and best of luck to you with everything you're doing with the virtual kitchens.
Thanks so much. Glad to do it.